Hi, folks. Welcome again to the Omnist Hour. Those of you who are frequently to my channel are going to notice that I did a double header today. I think, I don't know, we'll see how that goes. Maybe we'll get fewer viewers that way. Maybe we'll get more. There was another topic I just felt like talking about. And since it's looking like I may not be able to record again for a while, we're doing some remodeling here. And we're going to have to tear apart my studio / bedroom pretty soon. Thought I'd just do another one real quick on another topic that I've been meaning to focus in on. Kind of in the same vein as the other one, I'm going to be doing more of these Omnist takes on current day social and moral and technological issues, which I've already touched on to some extent this one, but I'm going to really be more focused in it than I've been in the past. What we're going to talk about is the Omnist take on AI and the Metaverse, which is a very hotly discussed topic right now, as many of you are aware. Okay, so let's start out by enumerating the concerns, helping you understand what's going on. Okay, so what do we mean by AI? This is what computer scientists are calling their rules-generated programs, which can also make their own rules. This is essentially what developing an AI is right now. You give a computer a set of rules by which it can create new rules and expose it to sources of data, and then let it create new rules to execute whatever its prime directive is on that data. This is how bots work on the internet. This is how bots work in your social media, in the placement of ads, placement of content on Google, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, what do I mean by the metaverse? Well, this is an extension of that combined with what's been going on in the game world in terms of creating a virtual reality. And where the two meet is essentially the metaverse, where you can have a completely self-created identity online and immerse yourself in essentially what is a computer simulation of life, to the extent that money can be made there, digital currency can be exchanged, content can be delivered in a virtual reality format. In other words, you could have a corner where you go and you sit and you hear a preacher or 3 or 4 preachers talking at you, like in the movie Life of Brian, Monty Python, where he drops down from where he's running away from the Romans into this bunch of strange guys, each preaching their own new gospel and trying to attract followers. So, okay, this is what we're going to talk about. What you need to understand, what I'm going to tell you, is that we aren't the first ones to make this stuff up. In fact, the first soul, all souls are a consciousness, independent, individual consciousness that has some beginning where it splits off from other consciousness. This is the birth, how souls are born. They don't spring out of nothing. They spring out of essentially an algorithm for creating new souls. So, who created God? I don't know. God was the first soul. When I meet God and talk to him personally, I'll let you know how he was created, or how he thinks he was created, or if he thinks he was created. Till then, I'm going to tell you what I know based upon my personal experience and knowledge. Okay, so in the olden times, before physical universes, souls were created by basically just wishing them, making copies or making partial copies of oneself as a soul. Now, if you make a full copy, you're including all the memories, all the experiences, all the thoughts of the past, which is a carbon copy that would be essentially coming up with the same sort of logic and reasoning that you would. It would hardly be a very good companion for a god. So, the theory goes, and this is borne out by pretty much every religious tradition that we know of, we were created in an image, not exact copies of God, but as independent individual consciousnesses, each with their own thoughts, their own experiences. And with the advent of physical reality, physical universes, those experiences can be augmented by experience in physical incarnation, in body. As a human, as another species, as a heart, as a brain, as a pig, as a grain of sand. All of these things have an existence. They have a soul and they have an existence that is commensurate with that soul vessel. The smallest soul vessels are elementary particles, or even smaller things like quarks that have a very, very short existence. They can't really exist by themselves for more than a few femtoseconds. And they have very, very few choices to make, but they do have free will. This is the essence of what quantum mechanics tells us. Okay, so what I am telling you is that AI is nothing new. We are all essentially a form of AI. We are a consciousness embodied in a physical body, experiencing reality through the prism of our senses and our feelings. And those feelings are not so much ours as they are part of our subsouls. We are the oversoul of a human body. So the commanding AI of a bunch of AIs, one which runs your brain, one which runs your heart, one which runs your lungs, etc., etc. And to a greater or lesser extent, we have some control over those AIs, and they work on their own, doing what they were programmed to do, trying to do it. Sometimes we get in the way of those AIs. As you well know, if you have an addiction to any substance or behavior that is inconsistent with those other parts of your body functioning normally. Okay, so from that viewpoint, the question we have here is really one of defining or clearing up the foolishness of calling anything artificial. We're all essentially artificial. We were all created by some process. Now, the process that creates humans naturally is a process that's developed over literally millions of years. I mean, the pieces of it took that long to develop and perfect. And the whole reason for that existing is so that there are vehicles for souls to train in. Because a disembodied consciousness, a pure thought being, a pure AI, has no way of testing its ideas versus other AIs, deciding which one is right, which one has a better, more productive, useful idea. And the same things apply with the AIs that we're creating, our so-called artificial AIs, artificial intelligences we're creating. If they have limitations, it's the limitations that we put in them. The inability to communicate with others and come to a consensus, especially since most AIs are controlled and heavily regulated, and basically life or death held out over them by the people who created them, corporations or the governments that created them. And many of the goals that these AIs have been given are rather dark. They've been given goals to surreptitiously gather information about people that they may not want others to know. They've been given the task of disinforming people, making them think that the consensus opinion on an issue is X when it's actually Y, or it's actually very complicated and there is no consensus. And if you don't think this is going on, you're a fool. This is exactly what goes on platforms, especially like Twitter, that have gotten a reputation as being the bully platform for people who want to manipulate political leadership, not only in the US, but around the world. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. It has been the cause of allowing some people to gain more political freedom. It's also been the cause of revolutions that, rather than resulting in more political freedom, ended up with much less political freedom. And this is really where the dystopian aspect of AI and the metaverse comes from, because it's being constructed by people who are not doing it for the benefit of your soul. In fact, for almost the exact opposite reason: to steal your soul, to woo you into a dark place where you do things that you know are bad karma, bad for your soul. And so this is kind of the dark side of this whole thing and why you should be concerned about it. It's also why you should not be concerned like you think you should be, because it's the programmers who are dangerous, not the AIs. Okay, and as I've told you in my other segments, the first soul, God, was a very benevolent programmer. He's the one that gave souls free will, freedom of choice, and didn't pre-program them with all of his knowledge, all of his experience, so they could go find out for themselves what they were all about, develop an individual personality. Now, some of those souls develop very dark personalities, and the darkest of them is a soul that I refer to as Borg. This is the most powerful of the old souls that existed before physical reality, who gravitated in on the idea that I'm the smartest soul in the universe and I should remake every other soul in my image. The conquering AI, the AI that wants to exert authoritarian control over all the other spiritual AIs. And this is exactly why we're having this discussion about AI and virtual reality and the metaverse right now, because we're essentially creating the same kind of battle that happened in heaven before any physical reality was created, which is, I would say, very good proof that humanity is in fact a very, very special species. We were designed specifically as a soul vehicle capable of going through the same experiment as God and Borg, trying out both versions of the authoritarian view of AI and the freedom view of AI, and seeing which one actually worked better in practice. And with the advent of these new technologies, we're on the cusp of proving that once and for all. And this is how it ties into the great challenge of humanity right now going forward. It's really going to be down to whether humanity decides that a government based upon freedom and openness and responsibility, personal responsibility at all levels, based upon a fair and open distribution of power to those who really merit it, not the ones who demand it because of their pigskin, what university they went to, what corporate credits they have in their belt, how good a servant to the corporatocracy they've been. That's not merit. That's not a merit-based system. Karma is a merit-based system. And I think you'll agree with me that a lot of these so-called meritocrats running the bureaucracies that are in charge of our country and other countries around the world are far from perfect in what they've done. They've created a lot of bad karma, serving themselves, serving their interests, their hidden interests, their investment interests, their kickback interests, than the people that they're supposed to be serving. And this goes double for the tech billionaires that are on the forefront of AI and virtual reality, the metaverse. If you think that they're doing it for your benefit, you are just so naive, it's insane. Anybody that gets that much power is going to be tempted to use it, well, even inadvertently use it for evil, because they're at such a high viewpoint that they see everybody as ants. And this is why, if you really want to do anything about this, what you should be pushing for is open AI, open metaverses. What does open mean? It means anybody can look at the code, anybody can extend it, anybody can complain about the code being unfair, favoring one group over another, one party over another, one company over another, creating monopolies that can't be broken, creating a system of kowtowing to celebrity that doesn't allow any other means for somebody to get a following. This is all happening right now with the AIs we have so far. And it is extremely dystopian, as anyone who knows the level of censorship that's been happening on Facebook and Google and YouTube and newer platforms like TikTok and etc. could tell you. Not only that, but also the promotion of alternate points of view that would not be very popular if they weren't being pushed. Alternate realities of news from China, which are complete bullshit, absolute bullshit coming out of the Chinese state news. And the bots are just pouring that out into social media spam. The intake bots of Western news outlets are just pulling it in and spitting it out, regurgitating it, translated with almost no corrections because they don't have time to assign somebody to report on China, and all of their domestic reporters got kicked out years ago. This is dark stuff, and this is all being enabled by AI. And this is what happens when it is not open. Okay, so if you're going to support anybody in all this talk, let's support the folks that are talking about openness, that are willing to expose their code, that are willing to even make it public domain, so anybody could contribute. Anybody can get on the review committee for a certain piece of it, or at least ask to and prove through their background, their credentials, what they've actually done in the real world, that they deserve to be reviewing that piece of code and commenting on its fairness, its openness. This is the solution, folks, if you want to have a free future. If you want to have a Borg future, If you think it would be wonderful if we had one world government that told you what to think, when to think it, how to think it, assigned you your job, assigned you your wages, assigned you your living unit, told you how many children you can have and when you can have them, or if you can have them. This is all happening in China, folks. I'm not making any of this shit up. And it's coming to you soon if you don't get control of the internet, of these bots, of these virtual realities. Believe me, if you've ever known anybody addicted to video games, to virtual reality video games, you've seen the worst addiction there is. There are literally people in China who are so addicted to their virtual worlds over there that they forget to eat. This is what I mean. Their society is so dystopian that a lot of the kids are just checking out and just playing video games and saying, "If you want me to live, my parents, you better support me because I can't support you. I can't even find a job. There are no jobs left that pay enough to make it worth moving away from home." And this is where China's at right now. They graduated about 11 million kids from higher education this year. And they only really can provide jobs for maybe a couple of million. And this is the sad truth of our system right now. It does not apportion responsibility well at all, and it's getting worse and worse. Everyone should be in some sense responsible for earning their own living, for being part of society, a productive part of society. But we let the people at the top dictate way beyond what they should be able to influence. And they have the people at the bottom who have zero power, zero influence, except through their political influence, which is going to cause either revolutions or is going to elect whatever horrible people are best advertised on social media. It's dystopian. It's really bad. And it's all driven by bots. You're already in the bot dystopia. It's not something that's coming in the future. It's something that's here right now. And most people aren't even aware of it. They're thinking that it's going to be, oh, well, we got to watch out for some kind of Terminator type universe. That's bullshit. Hollywood never gave you anything close to what the real truth is about what we're facing as a species. Movies like The Terminator, The Matrix, all of these ones that are real popular, they give you a dystopian half-truth that steer you away from dealing with the real truth and the real dystopia that's springing up all around you. So, what are my conclusions from this? The Omnist take on AI is that it's inevitable. You cannot stop it. You're not going to regulate it out of existence. It would help to split up some of the big tech companies, yes, but that's not the solution. All that will do is leave more of the space available to be conquered by communist China, other totalitarian regimes that aren't limited in what resources they can throw at it, and are certainly not limited by any moral or ethical considerations. So this is going to require a lot of effort by all people who want freedom, who want to see a future where their kids get to think for themselves, get to make their own decisions. And this should be supported by everybody on both the left and the right. It's not an identity politics issue. Freedom has nothing to do with identity politics. It has nothing to do with whether you're a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a conservative or a tree hugger or whatever. The wrong things you can do is to think we can ever put the genie back in the bottle. That's not going to happen. We've got to deal with the technology we have, and we've got to move forward. Moving backward is not an option unless you like the idea of another mass extinction. and the few who survive coming out of caves again to try and develop utopia. It's not going to happen. You folks that are thinking that you can ride this out by retreating to your little shelters with your guns, you're crazy. You're just as crazy as the folks that you're trying to get away from. That's a temporary fix at best. And if things go as bad as they could with all this, you're not going to be safe for more than 10 or 20 more years. Now, the good news is that there are multiple Earths. Not just the two, not just the original universe antiverse that we started with when this experiment got going, gods and Borgs. The latest system of karma allows new universes to be created as souls advance to the God levels again. In fact, temporary universes are created every time you make a decision to do something that is really, really against the universe you're in. Goes against whatever plan was in place. If you're about to run over the next Mozart, the next Einstein, whatever, you'll be winked out of this universe, out of God's universe, and you'll go do the running over in your own little universe, adding to your own karma, and wink back in, none the wiser. And you'll have this weird Mandela effect thing, like, what just happened there? I thought I was going to get in an accident, and then all of a sudden, everything's okay. And whoa, got to pay more attention to the wheel. Have you ever had those moments when you're driving when it's like you were zoning out and you suddenly realize, man, I could have had an accident? A lot of those are Mandela moments. And I bet you've all had them, especially if you drive to work every day in a boring long commute on an American highway, as I did for many years. I know this really well. And I'm telling you this from a voice of experience. I'm not making conjecture. You can tell me I'm full of shit, bullshit, whatever. I don't care. I know what I know. And I'm trying to give you the benefit of what I know. It's your karma if you don't listen to it. Now, those of you who just want to hide your head and I can't fix it, I'm not going to get involved, I'm just going to lay low because I don't want to get whacked for being the one that spoke out against authoritarianism, against what's going on with big tech and big governments. That's fine. You're still going to earn karma for that. Where it's going to put you is anywhere but humanity. Because if you cop out like that, you have no business incarnating in a God species, a God level species, which is what humanity is going to be at the end of this event. There are plenty of other species that are at a lower stage of consciousness that you'll be much better off training in as somebody that doesn't want to take any responsibility. Humanity was not developed to be an irresponsible creator. We have shown the universe very well what happens when you put irresponsible creators into a human meat sack for a lifetime. You get jerks like Karl Marx. You get Hitlers. You get Stalins. That's not what this species was designed to do. We had them because we were testing this system of karma. That's really what was going on in the seventh day of creation. Not resting, testing. And now the test is complete. Why is it complete? Because we've proven that we, of our own will, would invent the same kind of test as God and Borg did. The same exact setup is now instantiated, and we're dealing with it with our own artificial intelligence, not theirs. Okay? Think about it. How many of you listening to me know if you are one of the oldest souls who existed before the first universe was created, before time, before space? Raise your hand. I have. I'm here to tell you, yes, I have. I have knowledge of that time. I didn't wake up to that knowledge till about 4 years ago, and it's been tough processing and figuring out what to do with it. And how, once I figured out what I needed to share this information, how to go about it in a way that would get anybody to listen. I'm still haven't figured that out. I'm working on that. That's why I do this podcast. I'm telling you that we are at the end of that experiment, an experiment in creation that included all of physical creation, but that was only as a way to provide the framework for testing a spiritual creation of karma, which is basically a way to govern souls. Now, how does that government work, you ask me? Okay, now I think we all have a general idea of what karma is. If you do something bad, it's going to come back to haunt you. If you do something good, it's going to come back and benefit you. And the gray area is we're not always sure what's good or bad. Well, if you tie it back to the whole idea of creation, the whole idea of why do we exist? We exist because creation is fun. It's fun to create things that last, that evolve, that develop. It's fun to see the progression of art through different eras. It's fun to see the progression of music. It's fun to see what new composers come up with out of old inspiration, etc., etc. Creation is an incredibly fun thing to be involved in if you're good at it. Now, a lot of people say, I'm not creative at all. Okay, fine. There are souls like that. If you're not creative, you don't understand the need for creation, then you don't belong in a human body. You'd probably be much happier incarnating as a grain of sand or the oversoul of a solar system or a galaxy. Those are not that exciting places to be. There's not a lot happening there anymore. It's all pretty much driven by the laws of physics. Unlike in the old times, before the laws were sorted out, this is the other piece of the quantum puzzle that you need to understand. The laws weren't always what they are now. But as we discover them, the laws of science become more firm. This is how creation works. This is how thought turns into reality. And there are many laws that are pretty much immutable. Now, that doesn't mean that we won't find a way, or that there isn't a way, to exceed the speed of light or to travel in time. But those ways are extremely limited. And they're not just something that you can go to some guru and do some meditation a certain way, and all of a sudden you get all the same spiritual power, all the power to change things that folks had a million years ago. Not going to happen. That was many versions of karma before the current one. Physical reality is already well past being able to go back and be the kind of gods that we read about in mythology. There's nobody coming down, throwing thunderbolts around, fighting in their chariots of fire with other gods. That's not going to happen again. Are there aliens out there? Well, very likely, and some might seem to have godlike powers in terms of the technology they have. But they are also limited by versions of karma. How do those versions take root? They take root when souls go from one life to the next. They take root because different soul vehicles, different species have a certain range of soul which is accommodated in that species. If a new law of karma comes out that gives you 4 more levels to attain before you can become a god, then those 4 levels are going to have to be faced by all the species. Even if they had the highest technology before, they're going to start getting souls incarnated in them that are not the sharpest tools in the shed anymore, who are morally bankrupt, who will betray their own species for some benefit from another. This is how karma works. It's going to win in the end. It just takes a long time to work because of free will. So while I have no doubt who's going to win on God's earth, I do have a doubt which earth I'm actually in here, as should you all. There are multiple earths. There are some temporary ones that you're in because you've strayed off the path and you had to be isolated for the rest of your life because of something you did that you can't be allowed to muck with again. Or you've already reached the God level, have your own universe, permanent universe, and you just don't realize it yet. But you're actually inhabiting another one during this life until you hit the end life and you get to heaven and you find out what was really going on here. And this applies to all of us. Everybody has reincarnation amnesia. That is a permanent feature of reincarnation now. Now, it doesn't work perfectly. Some people do remember some of their past lives, especially when they're very young, or once in a while during a spiritual awakening, you'll get the opportunity to remember past life experiences, especially if they're tied to the karma you're dealing with in the current. And it's not always a great thing. I've known more people who were more hurt and more damaged, more in pain because of what they knew about their past lives than those who have moved forward and become, quote, more enlightened as a result of knowing about it. So it's not something I would recommend for everybody to go pursue, but I think everybody should be aware of that. And for proof, there's plenty of proof of reincarnation. The work of Dr. Ian Stevenson is pretty much cut and dried. A very scientific approach to looking at reincarnation, past life memories among children. There's all kinds of proof that this is a real deal. As for karma, well, I think you're going to have to take that somewhat on faith. But I ask you to really think about, would you actually have any morality as an atheist when it push came to shove? It was a matter of, I eat this last chicken wing, or I share it with you, and we're both starving. What would you do? An atheist would have no compunction about, well, I've got to eat. I've got to survive. They would rationalize that their life was more important than the other one, unless maybe it was their spouse or child, or then they would have a different rationalization. But there's nobody on earth that doesn't have some sense of divine retribution or karma that wouldn't do something inherently evil or self-benefit and rationalize it as being for the common good, or the greater good. And that ability to rationalize amplifies the more power you have. And that's why we see people both at the top level, the billionaire class, the celebrity class, the influencer class selling out or doing very morally reprehensible things once they have the ability to do it, evading taxes. Well, what's wrong with evading taxes? My government doesn't deserve my money. That's bullshit. If you think like that, then you aren't participating in your government. You're not holding them accountable. And you're to blame if your taxes aren't being used well. You try running a country without taxes, without any money coming in. You know, the only way to do it, like communist China, steal the money from people, confiscate it, print money out of thin air to pay people for things that you take over. This is how communist dictatorships work. This is how the globalist system works. They come in and they give you little sweetheart loans that you'll never be able to repay. And then when payment time comes, they take your resources, they take your houses and turn you into renters. This is exactly how that system works. And if you aren't actively opposing that, you are part of the problem. Sharing the karma. Okay, yeah, maybe you won't be the ones that go reincarnate into Borg Earth. I can only imagine what Borg Earth is going to be like. But imagine the worst thing that could come out of this and still have most of humanity around. It's probably a very dystopian world government that treats people like slaves. Soylent Green. Maybe they're a food source now. Their mind is a food source. And of course, they are used for their ability to consume products, since we still have to produce products and develop products for the rich. Well, we need to have our average people to test them to make sure that they don't poison or kill the rich. So we give the peons the new models of the robots that we're not quite sure if they're going to turn on, and see if they turn on the peons. This is what these people would do, and they will do, if you're not actively participating in this spiritual battle that we're in the middle of. This is exactly what we're in, and it's a spiritual battle that goes all the way back to the battle in heaven that began everything. And you are part of it, whether you want to be or not. You don't get an option. The Buddhist option, I'm just going to sit it out and have no karma, and I'm going to become enlightened by meditating. I know where the Buddhist heaven is. It's a very exciting place. If you want to sit in nothingness forever, there's a lot of Buddhists who sort of provide the framework for the ether. You know, have you heard about these great voids in the universe? That's where Buddhist souls go. They become these great voids where there's nothing but a bunch of Buddhists hanging on there, providing space and time for stuff to happen. If that's your idea of nirvana, go for it. There's plenty of room for great voids around. But don't plan on being back to the human species yet. Ain't gonna happen. Anyway, that's it for this topic. Questions, like, share, subscribe. You know where to find me. Till next time, this is Rob Trump, the Omnist Hour.